My name is John Aston and I'm a past president of the Society of Light and Lighting, and the subject I'm going to talk about today is why don't we use lighting controls? Not why don't we put them in buildings, but once we've put them there, why don't we use them? And what have we learnt in the past that can show what we should do in the future? So we'll start with, that's me. Why don't we use lighting controls? Well, we put lighting controls into a lot of our buildings. And I'm not going to talk about why we don't actually put them in our buildings. I'm going to talk to you this afternoon about we've got them in our buildings, why don't we use them? And I'll hopefully point you in the direction of some of the areas that you should look at. Now, when I went to speaker training college, they said, tell them what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you said. So what I'm going to say is roughly here on the introduction about lighting in the built environment, the reasons for using lighting controls, lights being left on after hours, why we don't use the controls we've got, look at who are the users, the user interfaces, and finally bring that up and say, what can we learn from the past to inform ourselves in the future? So lighting in the built environment. Why is lighting so attractive at the moment? Well, there's two huge reasons. One is the advent of solid state lighting and the opportunities that LED lighting bring to those who want to control it. But more importantly, if you think about any built environment, what goes everywhere in a building? The lighting. It even lands up in the broom cupboards. It's an infrastructure within a building that is clearly of great interest to people who want to gather big data. And that is obviously a question of who's going to be involved in this industry, what are we going to do about it, and how does this infrastructure work, and have we got the right foundation for that infrastructure? So just to put you in the mind, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Now, this is a quotation often ascribed to Winston Churchill. In fact, that's the true origin. George Santanier in The Life of Reason in 1905. And what he's saying is not actually you'll do the same things again and again and again, but you can be informed by history, which is why I'm going to give you a small history lesson. The energy crisis was the first real demand for lighting controls, and that meant that people saw their lighting as being a cost in terms of energy, and they produced solutions to reduce those costs, and they were very effective solutions, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Come the mid-80s, the emphasis began to change, and we found that actually by careful selection of componentry and equipment and the way it was installed, we could actually reduce the cost of a lighting installation. Now, as I spoke this morning, the quantity surveyors haven't quite bought into that yet. They'll catch up eventually, I hope. But the savings were quite significant. Something like, in a detailed costed example, 27% less cost in the installation. Then flexibility came out. People wanted buildings that could change with business needs, and lighting controls could do that more easily than rewiring the 240 volt or 230 volt, as we should call it now, lighting circuits. So the lighting controls, by being addressable, by being dimmable, by being cleverer than a 240 volt switch, were imparting flexibilities to buildings to change and to make a better investment proposition for those people developing buildings and using buildings. It wasn't until the 1990s, though, that they were really widely accepted, and virtually every building that I can think of over about 20,000 square feet or 2,000 square meters in the 90s was getting a control system of some sort, size or description. And although Part L has been called into a little bit of disrepute recently, it is actually quite difficult to pass Part L unless you do put lighting controls into an office. From 2000 on, we heard earlier from BEG about what they called human-centric lighting. I first learned of it as biodynamic lighting. I'm not sure we've yet got the right word for it, But effectively, lighting could affect people's performance. We still do not know enough about that, I have to say. There is good evidence to suggest that it has an important role to play, and lighting in colour, appearance and intensity should be adjustable. People like change. So controls are now demanding this possibility of delivering cleverer things in your lighting. Then 2005, the beginning of the solid state lighting revolution. Who believe that it's as recent as that we started to put LEDs into mainstream buildings? They've been used in entertainment quite a lot but up till then, but now coming into buildings, and now 11 years later it's probably the preferred choice. And we're delivering lighting solutions because LEDs are more flexible, more easily controlled. You can turn them on and off instantly. They're very easy to dim. All these other issues, with the right equipment, they're very easy to dim, I hasten to add. If you just bolt LEDs onto an old incandescent dimming system, you will have problems. But actually, energy is back on the agenda again. People are more concerned about using energy than they were. Principally, I think, because they want to avoid the power cuts that our successive governments have taken us down a wonderful road towards generating less electricity than we actually need. And now in the future, there's this talk of the Internet of Things and the delivery of big data for the business enterprise, all buzzwords that I never had to learn earlier. So what are the reasons for using lighting controls? There are 6 primary reasons in my view. Energy saving, properly configured and set up, it can reduce energy costs in a building by up to 60% compared to an uncontrolled system. Scene setting, again, making lighting interesting, making it more acceptable to the average person rather than all the bland, even illumination that you sometimes experience. Let's have a bit of sparkle, let's have a bit of variety. Personal control, actually allowing people to adjust their lighting to suit their needs. I don't know, I should perhaps have put this graph in, but you need about 4 times as much light when you're 60 as you did when you were 20 to do the same task with the same accuracy. How do we design buildings to accommodate that sort of diversity? Flexibility, we've already talked about, so I won't dwell on that. Comfort, we've talked about as well. And safety, the emergency lighting issue. You can integrate this into your control systems. And it's really about providing the right light, the right place, at the right time. Really? This letter was received by the then Lighting Industry Federation, now the Lighting Industry Association, from the London Assembly in 2010. And I won't ask you to try and read that, although it's actually just about legible. I'll highlight one phrase. The prevalence of lights being on outside main working hours. What were they talking about? That. And they actually appended a number of questions to their letter. Why do lights need to be on outside normal working hours? And how could this be minimised? Well, of course it can be minimised. You provide a control system that knows when people are there, when light is needed, and that control system can turn the lights off. Why do they get left on? Well, probably the system isn't configured correctly. There aren't enough local switches. The time programs are wrong. I had a long debate with a large bank situated on Canary Wharf about the energy savings calculations we should do for their building. They swore blind that the lighting management system turned the lights off at 11 o'clock at night. Visitors to the O2, and we had a number of colleagues who visited the O2 regularly because we had a box in the O2, were telling us no, those lights were on at 2 o'clock in the morning when they left the show. So it wasn't until I looked at the half-hourly figures and saw that they had a 1.2 megawatt base load that I was able to demonstrate to them that the lighting was part of their base load. And that's because nobody was checking what was going on. It's all down to the users, in fact. But who are the users? Well, there's a whole variety of users. We've heard this earlier today. There's the facilities team. There's the owners of the building. There are people who designed the building. The contractors who put it in have a degree of ownership. And then, of course, the building occupants themselves, the most important people. Now, we're talking about a building service that costs in energy terms probably less than 5% of most companies' budgets. And lighting is the most influential building service over staff performance. And staff are probably 70% of your overheads. Why would you want to compromise that 70% as well? So, user interfaces, I guess, are quite important. And I go back in history to the design of central controllers for lighting control systems to illustrate my point. Now, this was circa 1979. It's actually an extremely good user interface. You know what time of day it is, you know where the events are going to occur, and you have nice knobs which tell you exactly what you're doing in terms of your adjustments and your modes. Very simple, very straightforward. I suggest that might be what you call intuitive. Then we went digital. We kept the clever bits here and the easily understood bits here, but we went digital. Boy, was that a problem. Nobody knew what time the next event was going to happen. People struggled over using a keypad. So that was progress, though. You know, that was progress. So we then did this. We made it even more complicated. And yeah, different keypad, not even a logical, proper, understandable keypad. At least we did know what day of the week it was, but that was about it. So are we really progressing? Are we learning? Well, we do it now with software of one sort or another. But are these systems intuitive? Just because they operate in the Windows environment, or indeed any other operating system, does that make them intuitive? Or do you need to be trained and educated as to how to use them? And it's not just the central supervisor that you have to be concerned about in delivering good lighting control. Now, this is probably one of the best lighting controls for energy saving purposes ever invented. Actually, it was also very convenient for staff. It's the best occupancy sensor, it's the most intelligent occupancy sensor you've ever come across, because it could only be operated by the person who wanted the light. It was easily understood most of the time, although when we commissioned a system for a well-known accountancy firm that's now part of PwC, we were doing a commissioning exercise going around and the lights had all gone off. We deliberately turned them off so we could check that the lights could turn back on again. We were turning the lights on again to check they all worked. And a voice came from the darkened depths of this office building. How the devil did you do that? And we said, what? He said, turn the lights back on. We pulled the switch. This man did not even know that the switch would override the lighting. So you can see the challenge you have in delivering a clever, smart lighting system. We even had a cordless version of the pull switch, which was an infrared. Two-part version though, so you could lose a thing. But I've seen other ways of doing lighting override. This was still working in a bank on Bishopsgate the other day. I'll give you a chance to read the sign underneath the switch. Now, if after the 90 seconds have expired and nothing has happened, did you not press the switch for 5 seconds? Or have you not waited 90 seconds? Do you do it again? Will it get oh, never mind. What about this? The only label on this light switch is 415 volts. Well, do I really want that? Surely it would be more helpful if somebody told you what lights they controlled. And how many times have you come across that? Why isn't there a sign next to it that says what each of those buttons does? Ah, help at last. An aircraft hangar in the early 1980s. Somebody actually showed where the aircraft went and how the lights related to it. So now we have smart devices. You'd think we could do things clever. Yeah, but how do you relate what's on that screen to what's in the room? Have you got it right? Well, these people probably have. That's clever. And if you can deliver that into a commercial environment, you're getting somewhere because you're relating what's on the screen to what you can see. But then again, you slip back into which user uses this? Is that a commissioning engineer's tool? How do you relate one smart device to all those lights? We do need to learn a lot more about how we put control systems together. We even need to learn quite a lot about how we use those devices. Other suppliers are available. And it's a question of putting movement sensors in the right places. So you don't trigger them when you walk past in a corridor, an office with the doors open. How often have I seen that done? So what do we want them to do? Well, one of the things we haven't heard today so far is about lighting. Why do you put lighting in a building? You put lighting in a building because you want to illuminate the task that's being done in that building. You want to make it comfortable, you want to make it correct. You want to provide quality illumination. You need to employ a lighting designer, and controls can help you deliver smart lighting if the lighting is designed appropriately for that building. So you can really, truly offer a comfortable, safe working and living environment, because the same applies to street lighting, to lighting a station platform. As I came in this morning, about 9 or 10 of the stations I passed through, in daylight, had all their station lighting on. Why? What's wrong with daylight? I mean, daylight's a wonderful thing. I was accosted at a health conference by a teacher who had a very disruptive pupil in her classroom and said, could the lighting help? And I said, well, what sort of situation have you got and how much daylight is in the room? And she said, well, massive windows, as most classrooms of that sort of age had. And I actually got a call from her after giving us some advice. And she said, you know what cured this guy's problems? I turned the lights out and relied on daylight. No more problems. We don't even think of daylight properly these days. And I have to say, all those buildings there beside the Shard have got very expensive, very comprehensive lighting management systems in them. Somewhat doubt they're fully occupied at the time this photograph was taken. So what do we want out of a lighting management system or smart lighting? Do we want features or do we want benefits? Now, I understand that you need a lot of technology to deliver those benefits sometimes, but do you really want to publicize them like this and give somebody a menu like that? I don't think so. You need to tell them what a lighting management system can do for them and then get the right trained staff to deliver those functions. Lighting controls evolve from those pull cord switches that we used to have to standalone managed luminaires using various forms of occupancy detection. Then you go into networked and managed systems, and then the emerging technologies, localized programming. Now you can use a smartphone to tell your standalone controller that it can do different things. You can have different time heights and different thresholds for the sensors. You can use location-based services. You can walk around a supermarket and you'll suddenly get a ping on your phone. You're next to the thing on your shopping list. And there, behold, is the sugar puffs you wanted. Oh, sorry, they're honey puffs now, aren't they? And you can even use low-resolution video as a detection method, although there must be some ethical questions attached to that. Wireless and remote programming from smart devices are the potential for the future. But they're all relying on people knowing their way around this technology and understanding how it can deliver real benefits that people appreciate and understand. I won't go into that in too much detail because it really sort of covers what I've just said, but it's helpful when you pick up the slide after the show. And Internet of Things, yes, you can do lighting over the IP network, as has been done in this large building in Amsterdam called The Edge, and you can look it up on the internet. You'll find that all its lighting is connected to the IP infrastructure. It's a disruptive technology, as our colleague from the ECA mentioned. They're going to have to change how they do installations. They fortunately now recognise the opportunity they missed in the 50s, when lots of homes rang up and asked for a new socket to be put in their living rooms to accommodate the television set. And then the electrician declined to fit the aerial. Oh, I don't know about that. You need somebody else. What an opportunity the electrical contractors missed. And then you go from a smart building to a smart city. But we mustn't, in that headlong rush to adopt technology, forget the primary purpose of lighting, and that is to give us a good working environment. You've got to ensure these systems are effective and user-friendly. You must do your homework in what is a user-friendly control. Sit down with people who do it, experience it daily. I actually suggest you sat down with your wives or your partners sometimes who are not inculcated in the world of lighting and say, does this make sense? And if they say it doesn't, it probably doesn't. We must learn from our mistakes. Look at what we've learned in historical terms. We've learned that commissioning isn't done properly. We've learned that setup isn't done properly. We never allow enough time or money for the commissioning process. If we do that, we get more effective systems. Another one, security. Every IP address is a doorway into your systems. In America, through the telephone connection in a Jeep, they stopped a Jeep in its tracks on the road. They hacked in through the phone. And talking of automated cars, I can't see how they can introduce automated cars while there's still driver-driven cars, because the automated car is going to be cut up by the driver-driven car, and as you saw in the papers earlier this week, the automated car will turn over because it's got an ethical program that says, I cannot hit another car. The drivers will take advantage of that. Problems to come. So just to think, what could possibly go wrong? Well, this is a 21st century award-winning office building. And that's what the lighting management, the smart lighting, allowed to happen late at night. That should just not happen. There should never be lighting like that. There should be a way out. There should be background lighting. That's just hopeless. And some talk of smart meters. Actual photograph of a domestic house meter. 1.18 gigawatt hours. That's some house. I'm not having a smart meter fitted. It's not mandatory. So history may not repeat itself, as Mark Twain said, but it sure does rhyme. So lighting in the built environment is too important to compromise. We're entering a period of disruption. Let's go in there informed, experienced and knowledgeable and make the right decisions. Let's not forget. In the meantime, unfortunately, the lights are still left on after hours. Thank you very much.